11 minutes past the hour here on the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And guys, this past Sunday, the Niners took on the Dallas Cowboys. So we're going to talk about Niners-Cowboys, and here we go. The Niners took on the Cowboys. They won by a final score of 30-24. Now, this game was, to me, was a game of two halves. The first half for the Niners was very, very frustrating offensively. They really couldn't get nothing going. The Cowboys were featuring a six-man front that was giving the Niners problems offensively, especially trying to run the football. Not to mention, J.P. Mason, one of the leaders in rushing in the NFL, went down with an injury, and thank you, Aaron. My son Aaron just made this, so I want to show you guys. Isn't that just wow? That's incredible. Thank you, buddy. J.P. Mason went down with an injury, so they brought in Isaac Guerendo, and really, it felt like once Guerendo came into the game, things really ramped up for the Niners offense. Isaac Guerendo ended the game with 14 rushes for 85 yards. His longest was a 19-yard run. He had one touchdown on the ground, and he was averaging 6.1 a carry. That's great for Isaac Guerendo, who's got a ton of speed and a ton of athletic ability. But Jordan Mason re-aggravated that shoulder. He ended the game with 6 carries and only 18 yards. But once he came into the game, Guerendo, the offense seemed to kind of click, and the running game really opened up. But early on, the problems continued for Brock Purdy. He had 2 possessions in which there was a third down play where he had to hit Kittle for a first down, and he overthrew it. So he needs to be able to hit that target and keep the chains moving. Later in the game, still in the first half, they went for it on fourth down. He had a wide open Deebo Samuel that was cutting across the middle. That would have led to a first down. Unfortunately, he threw it behind Deebo, and Deebo was not able to hang on. And now there were some people out there that were saying, "Oh, well, Deebo dropped that pass." He literally had to reach back to catch that. So I don't put that on Deebo. I put that on Brock, because Brock's got to put it right there where it has to be at. So with that being said, Brock was struggling. The offense was struggling, and they only scored 6 points in the first half. While on the other hand, Dallas was able to move the ball with more ease than I would say the 49ers. So going into halftime, the score was 10-6. I was a little pissed because really the Niners had a chance to really go up big and to really push out that lead. They could have had up to 17 points, I believe, in that first half. But unfortunately, they only had 6. Going into the second half, they really turned things around, and we got to see the Niner offense, the offense that we saw last year. We got to see that offense. And so we started seeing short passes with lots of yak yards to both Deebo Samuel and to George Kittle, who was a beast on National Tight Ends Day. George Kittle ended the game with 6 catches for 128 yards and a touchdown. His longest was a 43-yard catch that happened in the second half. He was averaging 21.3 a catch. That is huge. Deebo Samuel, who also had a huge touchdown called back in the first half, he finished the game with 4 catches for 71 yards. And Deebo was clutch. Ricky Pearsall, who filled in for the injured Brandon Ayuk, he was 4 catches for 38 yards. But overall, in the second half, we saw Brock Purdy overcome the adversity, overcome the struggles that he was facing against that Cowboys defense. And for the first time this year, not to say that Kyle Shanahan can't do this, but for the first time this year, we saw drastic changes being made in the second half, adjustments, I should say. And we saw the Niners really open up offensively and take advantage of what Dallas was doing defensively and use that to their advantage. Brock Purdy ended the game with 18-26 for 260 yards and a touchdown. He had a 114 quarterback rating. On the other end, Dak Prescott, 25 of 38. He threw the ball 38 times. 243 yards, 2 touchdowns that came in garbage time, and 2 picks. Dak Prescott is probably one of the most underwhelming quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life. The guy just got a huge contract, and he's done nothing with it. I mean, literally, his 2 interceptions were so costly to the Cowboys in this game. The second one was the worst. The Niners, coming out of the half, just ran down the field and scored a touchdown super fast, as my brother would say, super fast. And then what happens? Dak throws an interception to Diamador Lenore, who had a baller game, and he gave the ball right back to the Niners, who went and scored a touchdown. So that was really cool. And just seeing... Hang on, buddy. Hang on. But Dak Prescott, really, it's like, this is a guy who got paid a huge contract. This is a guy who has a lot of potential. He's supposed to be the quarterback of the future for the Cowboys. I don't see it. Every time he plays the Niners, he plays horrible. He turns the ball over. He's inaccurate. And it's not just against the Niners, but it's against the rest of the NFL. So to me, it was a bad move for the Cowboys to give him this big of a contract, but I don't know what other chance they had to do anything. But hey, it's their problem, not ours. Rushing-wise for the Cowboys, they had Ezekiel Elliott. He had 10 rushes for 34 yards and a touchdown. But really, they had no running game whatsoever. And so one of the things that the Niners were struggling with was stopping the run. And I think that in this game, since the Cowboys had no running game, it was such a benefit for the Niners not to have to deal with that. Last week, we saw the Chiefs running hard right at Charvarius Ward, who struggles against the run. And this week, they had no running game, so they really didn't even take advantage of it. So good for the Niners, bad for the Dallas Cowboys. Taryn writes, I'm a little worried about the Niners following the first half, but I had a feeling they would get it together in the second half. Fourth quarter was a little iffy, though. So let's talk about the fourth quarter. This is something the Niners have had a problem with all season long. They did it against the Rams. They did it against the Cardinals. They almost did it against the Seahawks, and they did it again against the Cowboys, where they allowed the teams to get back in the game. You were up 27-10 against the Cowboys, and you allowed them to score 2 quick touchdowns in the fourth quarter to be down by 6. That's something that Nick Sorensen, our defensive coordinator, needs to figure out. That needs to stop now. You cannot be giving up leads when going against the bigger, better teams. Imagine if you're going against the Chiefs and you gave up those points. They would be right back in that game, and they wouldn't stop. And later on, this year we have the Lions, we have the Bills. So it's like, and the Packers. They may not even have Jordan Love in that game. They might. But they got to stop. I mean, they're ranked, I want to say they're ranked 30th in the fourth quarter defensively. That's terrible. That just cannot happen. And the Niners, when they got up 27-10, they went into like a prevent mode. And that allowed the Cowboys to capture huge chunk yards and move the ball down the field. The one thing that the Cowboys didn't do, which I was thoroughly surprised, was that they didn't attack over top. They didn't go deep to Kevondre Turpin. And I really thought they were going to get back in this game. Instead, well, it didn't matter because they went straight to CeeDee Lamb. He had 13 catches for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a monster game at the end of the day. But granted, those 2 touchdowns came in the fourth quarter, which some even Cowboys fans would argue that was garbage time. Because if it happened earlier in the game, it'd be a little different. Taryn writes, Niners need to win badly, and I know they would get it. Niners own Dak, and the Cowboys, they definitely do. The Niners own Dak and the Cowboys just like the Chiefs own Kyle Shanahan and Niners. It's just, I hate saying it. I hate saying it out loud, but it's true. We have to beat the Chiefs one of these days, and the Cowboys just can't seem to beat the Niners no matter how hard they try. Another big thing was the kicker, Anders Carlson. He was 3 for 3 on kicks. His longest was a 50-yarder. That was awesome to see. And special teams as well. Special teams played so much better in this game. It was probably the best game they've had special team-wise. This is the one game where they didn't give up a big punt return or kick return or one for big yardage. They hit all their field goals. They kicked all their punts. They didn't make any mistakes that cost the Niners the game or allowed the opposing team to get back in the game. That's been a problem for the Niners all season long. And we finally saw Brian Schneider get his special teams unit together and have a solid game. So good on special teams, but we got to see more of that moving forward. And this was a game they had to have. I mean, they were going into this game 3-4. You cannot go to the bye week at 3-5 because that means that you can only lose maybe one more game, if that. So at this point, the Niners had to win this game. The Cowboys, on the other hand, were in the same situation where they had to win the game to stay relevant, and they lost. The Niners won this game. It was a big win for the Niners. We saw Brock Purdy overcome adversity, have a much better second half, and not only that, but he had three. How many did he have? Let me double check. He rushed the ball 8 times for 56 yards. He was averaging 7 yards per run. And Brock Purdy, with his legs and with his arm, got the Niners back in this game and got them to take control of this game. But this is the one problem I have with the Niners is that they never play a complete 4 quarters of football. When the offense gets it together, the defense makes a mistake. It gives up 14 points in the fourth quarter. When the defense is playing really good, the offense can't get it going. When either one of those are playing good, the special teams makes a mistake and gets the other team back in the game. So they got to have a game where special teams, flawless. Offense, on point. Defense, shut down. Once we have that game, that's going to really change things for the Niners. But help is on the way. Coming out of the bye week, they are scheduled to get back Christian McCaffrey. He is an integral and a huge part of this offense. Without him, we've seen how the offense, especially in the red zone, has struggled. Now, in this last game against the Cowboys, the Niners had good red zone numbers. They were 3 for 4, which is better than they have been in most games. But getting a guy like Christian McCaffrey back is absolutely huge. Not only as a runner in the running back position, but as a receiver and the distraction and what he does to defenses every single game. Getting him back he's our best player, and we absolutely need him back. And I can't wait to see McCaffrey against the Buccaneers, which I'm calling it right now. Niners are going to win that game, and I think they win big because the Buccaneers are without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who got his foot turned sideways, which is really scary to look at. But they're without their top receivers. And we saw without the top receivers that it was much harder for Baker Mayfield to get things done. And that's understandable. I mean, Brock had the same problem. He had receivers dropping left and right against the Chiefs game. His top 3 receivers were out. And he had a tough time getting the ball to his receivers, guys that he hadn't practiced with. So we saw that. The Niners should spin the block on the Bucs. Yeah, I think they're going to win that game. And when you look at the remaining games or the games they have moving forward, we have the Buccaneers, we have the Seahawks, we have the Packers, and the Bills. I could see us winning all 4 games. I can also see us losing one of those games. And the Cardinals as well. I think we get revenge on both. I think we get revenge on the Cardinals, and we beat the Seahawks because we always beat the Seahawks these days. And we're at home in that game. And I'm not even sure they're going to have DK Metcalf. So I see the Niners really going on a run after the bye week, similar to what they did last year. And I think it starts in Tampa. That's a game that they have to win, and they have to dominate and set the tone for the second half of the year. And I think they will. I saw a lot of good things out of the offense in the second half. We saw a lot more short yardage passes that led to more yak yards for the receivers, and that's what the Niners were the best at last year. This year, they've gone back to more of a 5-step, 7-step drops where they're throwing the ball downfield. And I think that's fine to mix in with what you're doing, but the Niners need to stick to what works. And what works is those short yardage passes that leads to big yak yardage from Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Ricky Pearsall. Pearsall had an end-around run, jet sweep if you call it. He ran for 39 yards. That was great to see him out there. And to me, I think that Ricky Pearsall could really fill in where Brandon Ayuk left off. He has the hands. He has the separation ability to really kind of bring what we lost in Brandon Ayuk. And not to mention, Ayuk isn't going to be back by week 1 next year. He's not going to be back until this time next year. He tore his MCL and his ACL and some of his meniscus as well. So his knee is all banged up. So it'll be great to see him back next year. But this year, I think the Niners are still in a good position to compete and get back to the Super Bowl. Now, there have been rumors out there about the trade deadline coming up. I think the Niners really need to focus on their defensive line, either a defensive end or an interior defensive lineman. That's where they need to focus on. And they've already said there's been reports that the Niners probably aren't going to go after a receiver because they're confident with the group they have. I'm confident with the group they have. I like the group they have with Deebo Samuel, Ricky Pearsall. Those guys out there. Jawan Jennings when he comes back. Chris Conley. I think they can get it done with the receivers that they have. Don't forget Jacob Cowing as well, who's a burner. So I think I would like to see them go after someone on the defensive line. Azeez Ojulari from the Giants would be a great pickup. That would help a lot. I saw rumors that teams were inquiring about Myles Garrett. Holy cow. I would give up multiple first-round picks to get Myles Garrett. I'll tell you that. If they got Myles Garrett, which I don't think they will, but if they did, that would be an absolute freaking game changer. Unbelievable. But we'll see what they do. There's also been rumors that they're connected to trade talks with both DeForest Buckner and DJ Jones. Buckner of the Colts, Jones of the Broncos. Both are former Niners, and I would love to see both or either or back in a Niners uniform. That would put them right back at the top. I would love to see DeForest Buckner back in a Niners uniform. That would be. He's the one that got away. He's the one they should have resigned. But that would be amazing if we got either one of those guys back, because the Niners definitely need some help in the interior on the defensive line. So Niners, Buccaneers, we're going to talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the show, but the Niners kicked ass against the Cowboys. They really put it to them in the second half, and they won by a final score of 30-24. Yes, they allowed it to get close again, which is something they need to work on. Nick Sorensen, I'm looking at you. But the Niners ended their first half of the season at 4-4. Could have been worse. You're talking about a season so far that had multiple injuries. Christian McCaffrey, injuries to the defensive line, Javon Hargrave, Juwan Jennings, J.P. Mason. A lot of these guys were banged up, and they had to persevere. And I would say 4-4 is not that bad. It could have been a lot better. This team had a real chance to go 6-1. I'm sorry, 7-1. Losing only one game to the Vikings. And that would be an entirely different story of how the league views them. But it is what it is. They're 4-4. But I think this team has the talent and the experience to bounce back from this and really go on a run. So I'm really excited to see what the Niners will do in the second half of the season. So that starts not this week, but next week, because the Niners have a bye.